You're looking for the perfect character name, but where do you go? And how do you know if it's really a good one? I'm going to give you 6 tips today about how to know if it's a good name and kind of what to think about when you're naming your characters. And then I'm going to give you 3 places to look and help you find other names or other ideas for names that maybe you haven't thought about before. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. I really do appreciate it, especially if you're finding value. Please do that. It just helps me out and helps other people find this channel and these videos. Let's jump in. When it comes to naming characters, there's a lot of things that you can think about, but I'm going to try to boil it down to just kind of like 6 kind of guidelines, if you will, or tips to just kind of help you. Now, these are not rules. There's no real hard and fast rules about naming your character, but there are some things that you should consider and that will actually kind of make your writing and your storytelling a little bit easier. First is you want to make sure that your names are both lyrical and diverse. If all your names are like Bob, Jane, Pam, Mark, Frank, like, really? That gets old and boring really quick, and it's hard to keep them straight in your head if you're a reader. One of the things that you have to pay attention to when you're naming characters is that people are going to be first reading your script. They need to be able to track who is who in many ways based on the name of the character. And if you have names that are not lyrical or names that are not diverse, so they all start to sound alike, it's hard for the reader to keep track. It's hard for people to keep track of which character is which. So you want to make sure that your names are lyrical. In other words, that they sound good. Right? I want a sound good name. I want a name that when I write it on the page, whoever looks at it, they're going to pronounce it the same way. So try to avoid weird spellings and all that kind of stuff. Just try to be very, in some ways, traditional with a name spelling if it's a common name. If it's not a common name, then spell it however you want. But what you want is when a reader reads it, that they pronounce the name the same way. Okay? So if you've got 2 executives that are reading your script and one of them pronounces a name one way and somebody else pronounces a name the other way, and then they start talking, oh, I really like this character. I don't remember that character. Oh, yeah, he's the one that did that. Oh, that's so-and-so. No, that's so-and-so. Like, you don't want that discussion, right? You just want them to be able to talk about it. So make sure your names sound good and that whoever would read that name would pronounce it generally the same way. The second part of that is if you've got a character, and this is really true more for main characters than anybody else, your main characters typically have a first and last name. Some of your supporting characters have first and last names. Most of the characters, though, just have a first or a last name in your script because you're just trying to keep it simple, right? Screenwriting is about economy. I just want to keep it short and simple. But if you have a first and a last name, one good practice is to pair a common name with an uncommon name. So a name that is normal, Luke, and Skywalker, something different. Or John, Wick. Now, there are exceptions to this, right? Like, I could name a character Hannibal Lecter. Those are 2 not common names, but he's also kind of a bad guy. So maybe I want to feel a certain way about him. But generally, your main characters, you kind of want them to have a common first name and an uncommon last name, or flip it, an uncommon first name and a common last name. But what you want to avoid is common first and last name. So Bob Smith would not be a great character name. If your name is Bob Smith, I'm sorry. As a character name in a film, not a great name. The third thing to think about with a name, especially for a main character or a key supporting character, is you want a name that you can have iterations of, right? So nicknames or terms of endearment that people call that person, because you don't want to just keep calling them Bob the whole time, right? Mom and dad may call that person Robert. Their best friend calls them Bobby. Their coworkers call them Bob. Their spouse might call them Bubba, right? So I can iterate those names. Now you can create nicknames for your characters, but you want nicknames that are similar to the name that you've given the character because it helps the reader track with what's going on. So if you can make an iteration of the name, that would be really great because it gives you some diversity and it helps reveal character by who calls that person what. That helps us understand the nature of the relationship and what's happening. Okay, this is one that a lot of people fall into. When I see a lot of scripts, this happens all the time. And you want to try to avoid this one because, again, you're trying to help the reader track your characters and keep them separate. And you want to give them every possible opportunity to help them do that. So yeah, you're writing unique dialogue for each character. This one speaks this way, this one speaks that way, of course. You're giving them different personalities, of course. But the names also help. And if you start naming characters that have the same first letter of a name, so I've got a Kevin and a Carl and a Kathleen, well, that maybe I call Kathy or Kath. Now I've got Carl, Kevin, Kath, and they're all K's, and I'm starting, wait, is this Carl or Kevin? No, just don't do that. And even kind of the similar sounding names. So even if it's Kevin, Carl with a C and Kathy with a C or a K, it's the same sound. And what you want to try to do is keep your main and your key supporting characters to have a different letter to start their name. Just something different. This also helps if you're using screenwriting software, which you should be doing, because a lot of screenwriting software will shortcut it. All you have to do is type the first letter and it fills in the name. But if every time you write dialogue, you're having to scroll through and choose the right person, it slows you down. But if you have main characters, the people that are mostly talking all have a different first letter of their name. You're just only having to type the one letter, a J here, a K here, and a T here for John and Kevin and Tomas, right? So I've got all of those, like, oh, okay, I can keep all those straight, nice and easy. So avoid naming your characters with the same letter for each person. Now, you might have a reason for doing that. Maybe it's siblings, and we've all known families, some of us are in families where all the kids in the family are named with the first letter. So maybe you've got a bunch of siblings and you've got a Jonathan and a Jedediah and a Jake. Okay, so, but I can try to create nicknames or terms of endearment, the previous one, to help us keep them separate. So if you can, different letters for the name. A corollary to that one is you want to try to vary the amount of syllables in the name. So if all your names have 2 syllables, right, or 1 syllable, yeah, because like I really like short names so that I don't have to spend a lot of time writing the whole name every time. I don't want to write Frederick every time. I just want to write Fred. And it sometimes helps my page count. What you want to do is pay attention to the syllables of your names. And this is how you can kind of get away with things if you feel like there's a really good story reason for having your characters all names start with J, for example. So just make sure you're varying the number of syllables. That helps us keep track and keep them separate. So I've got a Jack and a Jacob and a Jonathan, right? I can keep track of those because they all sound different. But if I've got a Jack, a Jake, and a John, well, now I'm going to start to get a little confused. So vary the amount of syllables. That will help you out. The last one in this list, and this is just something to be aware of and think about, is have a name for your character that helps support the theme or helps support part of their nature of their character and who they are and what's going on with them. And the reason this is important, and you know this is important, this is why we take time to craft names. We want the name to help support something that's going on. But a lot of times we think, well, I just want a name that supports what the character is and who they're like. So they're a hero, so I want to give them a name that means hero or a heroic name, which may or may not be the right move. What you can do instead, and some other way to think about it, is what does that character need to learn, maybe? Or what do they need to walk away from, maybe? Or what's a theme of the movie that you are telling? Maybe their name supports that theme. And if you can start naming characters like that, they start to feel a little more authentic to the world. They feel like they fit in the world. Why? Because their name means the same theme that is in the world that you've created. So if you can start thinking thematically about your names, it's actually going to help you choose better names for your characters. So you're like, okay, I've got all that, but where do I find names? Like, do I just imagine them? And some people, a lot of people tend to go to the internet, right? We're going to do a search. And I might know that my character is French or has a French name. Their family is French. So I might go look up popular French names, right? Popular boy French names, popular French last names, popular girl French names. And I start looking those and I try to see, but they don't always tell me what the name means, and I'm really just kind of looking through and trying to find something unique. And I will honestly, personally, I use that for my very like string characters, or if somebody needs a name, something like that, that's where I'll go and look sometimes, because it's quick and fast. I just need a name, boom, plug it in, and I move on. And then sometimes later I'll come back and I may change the name, but I use that as like placeholder. I don't really use that for my names of my main characters. Here's 3 places you can go and look. One is a baby book. Okay, a baby name book. This is one I've got. It not only tells you the name, it tells you the meaning of the name, the origin of the name, other iterations of the name. So if you can find a baby book of names that's got that kind of information in there, that can be really helpful. And it helps you see names that are not common. If you're just looking on the web, you're only going to see the common names. I don't want the common names. I want unique names. I want names that people haven't really used. So I will sometimes start scrolling through if I know, like, okay, my main character's name starts with a B, so my antagonist, that's kind of a soft sound, buh. I want a hard sound. I want a T or a K. So I'll start looking through the Ks and the Ts for a name for my antagonist, maybe. Just because lyrically that might sound good to me for that particular story, but it helps me find some things. That's really helpful if you're wanting to know meanings of names and things like that. Another place you can go and look, and this is actually one of my favorite places to go and look, is if I know the origin of a name. Like, I know this character is from here. I want them to have this kind of a name. What I will do is I will go and look up an Olympic team roster for that specific country. So if I know I've got a Russian character and a Russian name, what I will do is I will find maybe from 10, 12 years ago, go look up who was the Russian team for the Winter Olympics. And I will go and look, and I will just look at all of their names. And I will find a first name that I like, and I'll find a last name that I'll like, and I'll cross-reference it with my book and see what does that name mean. And that usually is a great way to find really good names, because you're finding different pieces of names that can fit together. The third one, and some of you may do this, I know some other people do this, this is a great one to do, is find one of your favorite movies and watch the credits. All the below the line credits, the people that are working in sound and grip and electric and visual effects, all the names that are listed there. You're going to find a great name. And you don't want to use the whole first and last name, but find a first name, find a last name, pair them together, or just a first name or just a last name, especially if it's for a supporting character. You don't really need a first and last name most of the time, so don't feel obligated that you have to have one. But looking in the film credits is a great way to do that, and it helps to honor the people who are working on films. I would encourage you, just when you go to the theater or when you're watching a movie, watch the credits. There's a lot of people that spent a lot of time and energy working on that film, and just try to read some of the names, try to learn what they do. It's just a great way to honor them. Hopefully this has been helpful to you as you start thinking about naming characters. And if you found some value, please like, subscribe, bell. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Otherwise, happy writing. And if you're going to tell a story that matters. See you later.